special. Welcome to
Okay.
the special board meeting of West Virginia Water District for the Water Policy and Legislation Committee. Uh, Mr. General Manager, could you please call the roll? I call the
Yes,
meeting
thank
to
you very
order.
much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Don Deere,
Here.
Chairwoman Gloria Gray,
Here.
Director Scott Houston, Director Harold Williams,
Here.
Director Desi Alvarez. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
I thank you. Is there any public comment?
Madam Chair, we have not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there is any member of the public that would like to make public comment, now would be the time to do so. Please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. We will call on you.
I thank you. Can you go to the next item, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have one item for action, and that is item 5A. It does begin in your packet at page 3. And this is an item to authorize the memorandum of agreement with Metropolitan Water District for grant opportunity with the Environmental Protection Agency Climate Pollution Reduction Program for zero emission vehicles. And for this presentation, we do have Tammy Hurley-High, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst, as well as Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
Thank you, Jade. Good afternoon, directors. Yes, I'm happy to provide information on this item. And then also I want to just mention that we have with us here Mitch from our operations department who can help answer any technical questions that you may have regarding electric vehicles. So as EJ had mentioned, this is a EPA grant for zero emission vehicles. And Metropolitan has identified this grant opportunity for greenhouse gas reduction measures that are associated with transitioning to zero emission vehicles. We'll all refer to them now as ZEVs. Thank you. So Metropolitan, they have invited the member agencies and retail agencies, including West Basin, to join a coalition partnership for this proposed grant funded program. And this item is being brought to you for consideration to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Metropolitan Water District for the intention of West Basin to participate in this program, in this coalition. So this is being recommended now. This is binding, meaning that if Metropolitan does receive the grant award, there will be another opportunity to review the EPA agreement that they will have with Metropolitan and to consider entering into a sub-agreement if West Basin would have a sub-recipient agreement between West Basin and Metropolitan, which at that time would be a binding agreement. So we could receive benefits of the grant. Included under attachment A is a draft of that grant proposal that Metropolitan submitted. Also included is a copy of the draft MOA. Metropolitan today provided an updated version of the MOA, which basically provides, it clarifies the provisions that are contingent upon award and approval. So that updated MOA will be included for the board meeting next week after this committee. So West Basin staff, we have identified a potential use for the new ZEVs. And West Basin right now, we currently have a gas-powered work truck. And this vehicle is nearly 6 years old. So should West Basin participate in the grant coalition, the funding would help reduce future expenses when we're needing to purchase a new vehicle. As you may be aware, the ZEVs are currently mandated by state regulation. And this is known as the Advanced Clean Fleet Regulations and is part of the California Air Resources Board's overall approach to accelerate a large-scale reduction in tailpipe emissions that focus on zero emission, medium and heavy-duty vehicles in California with the gross vehicle weight rating greater than 8,500 pounds. So it's part of a suite of other regulations and targets to reduce emissions and greenhouse gas emissions statewide. So in 2022, California codified its most ambitious target to date with the passage of AB 1279, which sets the state on a path to reduce emissions 85% below 1990 level by the year 2045, and to also achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. So West Basin does fall under the state and local government classification of the regulation, which are required to ensure 100% of vehicle purchases would be zero emission by 2027. So with that in mind, this potential grant opportunity seems to be well timed. So Metropolitan, they recently submitted the single application. They would be the lead agency, and the 10-member retail agencies and coalition members and subrecipients. Metropolitan grant proposal is requesting funding to upgrade up to 440 trucks and support staff capacity in order to manage that grant. So the benefits of ZEVs, they do not produce tailpipe emissions, reducing air pollution in communities where these trucks operate. West Basin would benefit by replacing the current gas-powered truck with a ZEV when going out to communities that we serve that include disadvantaged communities, which often bear the brunt of pollution from conventional gasoline use vehicles. ZEVs are quieter compared to traditional diesel or gasoline trucks, which can lead to less noise pollution in residential areas. So if awarded, the grant funds would be used for the purchase of new ZEVs, installation of charging infrastructure, and other costs related to deploying and maintaining ZEV technology. And the estimated timeline for this program would be up to 5 years. The anticipated project start date is October 1, 2024. So again, if we plan to purchase a ZEV work truck in 2027, it would seem this is a good opportunity to leverage the grant funding to decrease the anticipated cost of purchasing a new work truck. So West Basin would receive grant funding in an amount that equals the difference in cost of purchasing a ZEV version in place of a traditional gas version. So therefore, staff is recommending that the board consider entering into a memorandum of agreement with the Metropolitan Water District. I'll leave it there. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Director Deere, did you have any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Director Williams?
No questions, but it sounds like a good idea to me. Although I
Yeah,
don't own an electric vehicle, my vehicle is so old, but I'm gonna wait until they, I'm gonna wait.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to add, we feel that this is a placeholder for West Basin to put in for the opportunity, if we so choose during that period, to access these funds. As Tammy mentioned, the truck is nearly 6 years old. This would give us possibly another, I believe, 5 years of an opportunity. So we could be dealing with a 9, 10, or 11-year-old truck. And at that time, if we were to seek to replace that, we would have access to these funds in order to offset our costs. I believe that this is a no-risk action. West Basin is not required to buy an EV, though if we did not buy that EV, we would not be able to access the funds. So you either do or you don't, but there's no risk as far as this action goes.
Well,
And
thank you
EJ, I
for
would
that.
just, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was just gonna add that we will be required to purchase a ZEV truck in the future. So
Yes.
That will be a requirement based on the state regs that are in place now. So the next time that we do purchase a truck, it will need to be ZEV. So we just saw this as a good opportunity to leverage the funds that could come through if they're successful with the grant to minimize our cost of that future purchase.
That's correct.
All right, well, thank you for all those comments. I think it was I don't see any downsides to that. I think it's beneficial. I mean, we are the world is really the state of the whatever's leading towards zero emission vehicles. So I certainly support it. I wanted to hear from Director Deere. Any comments?
Yes, I support it also.
Okay, so we will move it forward. Thank you. That's exciting to me. All right, so next item, but thank you very much, Tammy, for the presentation. Thank you for the comments from everyone too. EJ, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, before I move on to our information calendar, I did want to make note that Director Scott Houston has joined us here. So with that,
All right,
I'll begin with
welcome, Director Houston.
Thank you.
item 6A is our information calendar. It's our monthly state and federal legislative update for April 2024. And for this presentation, we have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, directors. I'm now on page 45 of the agenda packet. And I'll begin with the state legislative update, which begins with the Neomela Pappas monthly report that's on page 47 of the packet. So we're now at the point of the current legislative session where all proposed bills with potential fiscal impacts have had to go through their first set of appropriations committees of each house. Those bills with fiscal impacts that aren't palatable to the committees are held under submission and are considered dead for the remainder of the year. Since this is the second year of a 2-year legislative session, the bills that are held are not able to come back unless they're introduced as new bills next year. And due to the sizable budget deficit that we're looking at, getting bills through appropriations committees this year has been more difficult than usual, with a higher percentage of those bills getting held than in previous years. On the topic of the budget, of the state budget, Governor Newsom released his May revise a couple of weeks ago, which included billions of dollars in budget reductions. It's looking less and less likely that the structural deficit can be solved through tax increases alone. And part of the reason for that is that when the state raises taxes, obligated to send a portion of that increase to education and healthcare. There's some kind of built-in formulas for that. So therefore, the budget cuts must be utilized to bring the budget into balance. This does include some cuts to water programs, including a $500 million haircut for water storage projects. And while the governor's office currently projects a budget deficit of about $30 billion, it's likely that the independent analyst, the LAO, will continue to project a larger deficit of approximately $50 billion. The legislature has a statutory deadline to pass a budget by June 15th, so just a few weeks away. And the governor would then have until June 27th to either sign or veto the legislative budget bill that the legislature passes and sends to him. Additional information regarding the state budget is included in the monthly report. Shifting over to bonds, the climate bonds, there still seems to be 3 primary areas under consideration. The climate bond, which would include water, housing, and then also education. If a climate bond does move forward to the November ballot, it will likely be smaller in size than what was previously reported on and anticipated last year. Initially, they were thinking about a $15 billion climate bond. Now we're looking more at the range of $6 to $10 billion. And there's also still a possibility that the climate bond could get combined in with either the education or the housing components. West Basin and the coalitions that we are a part of continue to advocate for the climate bond, including money for recycled water, conservation, water supply, and other needs of the water industry. The legislature has to approve the placement of a bond on the November ballot by late June. So there's just about a month left to finalize the size and scope of any proposed funding package in the bond. I'd like to highlight just a few bills here that are making their way through the legislative process. You can find a full list of bills that we're tracking in the bill report attachment as part of the agenda packet. SB 1330 is a bill that would delay the compliance timeline for some of the upcoming conservation regulations that we'll talk about in a minute that are scheduled to be phased in over the next 3 to 5 years. This is a bill that would help our retailers who have to comply with them. It would also require Department of Water Resources to collect and report data on its website, and it would allow retailers to report their data on either a fiscal year or a calendar year basis, providing some good flexibility to those retailers. This bill passed through the Senate, and it has now gone over to the Assembly side. Another bill of interest is AB 2079, which relates to high capacity water wells. Initially, this bill would have prohibited the approval of permits for new high capacity wells if that well was located in an area within a certain distance of certain communities, or if the area had experienced a minimum amount of subsidence. The initial language presented problems for pumpers, even in adjudicated basins like ours here in the West Coast Basin. However, the bill has since been amended to exempt the drinking water wells of urban retail water suppliers. So it would no longer be applicable or impact our retail pumpers, which is a really good thing. So this bill also passed the Assembly on a 41-17 vote, and it is now over on the Senate. And then lastly, SB 366 is legislation that the Board of Directors took a support position on last year. This bill relates to the California Water Plan and long-term supply targets. It did pass the Senate last year, but it hasn't seen much action yet this year so far. It was recently amended in April and is now awaiting further action in the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. That's definitely a bill that we'll continue to track since we do have an active position on it. On some other topics, last week, a Delta Conveyance project cost estimate and cost benefit analysis was released by Department of Water Resources, which showed the benefits of the potential project far exceed the expected costs. The analysis determined that for every $1 spent on the project, $2.20 in benefits would result. Metropolitan Water District was especially interested in the results of this analysis as it contemplates its long-term water supply sources. Metropolitan will be having the executive director of the Delta Conveyance Authority, as well as the economist who helped perform the analysis, to provide an update, I believe, at the June 1 Water and Stewardship Committee. And then finally, earlier this week, the state released the most recent draft of its proposed conservation as a way of life regulations. Staff is currently reviewing the updated draft, and we're hopeful that this version maintains many of the improved aspects of the second draft that we saw, and that are would be expected to benefit our retailers and our CII customers. And to give you a brief refresher about the regulation and some of the details of the timeline and the recent updates is Augustine Hahn, our water policy and resources analyst, who will be heavily involved in working with our retailers to not only educate and help them understand the regulations, but to help them ensure compliance with those. So Augustine, please go ahead and provide a quick update for that.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be before you today. This is my first time speaking before you, so just wanted to say hello and introduce myself as a new member of the Policy and Water Resource Development team. As Matt mentioned, this past Monday, the State Water Resources Control Board released their third draft of the Making Conservation a California Way of Life, or water use efficiency regulations. For your background, this is as a result of SB 606 and AB 1668, which was passed in 2018. And this policy sets a new framework for long-term water use efficiency. It implements a budget-based volumetric water use target, also known as the Urban Water Use Objective, and also requires suppliers to undertake performance measures, or a work bill. This third draft follows the release of the initial text in August of 2023 and a second draft in March of 2024. There were a number of changes to the language. One of the main themes in the update include the importance of trees and tree canopies. The revisions provide an opportunity for suppliers to submit variance requests to account for the protection of new trees and or an increased budget for existing tree canopies. Staff continues to track the regulatory process, engage with industry groups and our retailers, and also assess the impacts on West Basin service area. This, the release of the third draft kicks off the third comment period, which will end June 4th before full adoption, which is currently anticipated for this summer. Staff will continue to provide updates as required to the board and will plan for a comprehensive overview once the regulations are fully adopted. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Augustine. And with that, that concludes our state legislative report. Are there any questions before I move over to the federal report?
Thank you. Director Dare, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Williams,
No, thank you.
Director Houston?
Yes, I do. And I think maybe this is a little more for EJ because maybe you have some insight, but I did see the third round of these regulations coming out with comment period. And one, Aqua, of course, is looking to weigh in on their own, correct?
Yes, they sent out email notifications seeking input from its member agencies.
And so on that though, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it either, but are there any concerns you're aware of from some of our retailers in this area or anything that Aqua has concerns with that you're aware of at this time?
You know, we've been going through the process of meeting with our individual retail agencies. I think if I was to summarize the comments that I received is just the burdensome nature of the regulatory scheme. Over the past 10 years, I think you've seen that urban water retailers are being required to not just report, but provide, I would say, some pretty significant reports on a monthly basis. Sometimes it's data and sometimes it's additional analysis. In this case, you're looking at water use efficiency targets. The calculations themselves for every individual retailer is complex. I think they're trying to simplify it. They're trying to find, as was just mentioned, exemptions to their rules so that they're not steadfast. And so I think it would be safe for me to say that all urban water retailers have the general concern. I don't know that we've heard any specific concerns in relation to these modifications or the changes, but we're working with Aqua and our associations, and we're actually reviewing the material ourselves and looking to see if there's anything that we want to provide input on.
It's a very short deadline.
Yes.
One like 15 days or something, right? I haven't heard anything either, but I also haven't had time to really read the piece. But number one, I trust Aqua would be our biggest advocate. And the other question I have is when will these actually take effect? When they're adopted, but when will they take effect? Do you know?
Yeah.
There hasn't been a firm date yet. Everything we've heard is sometime this summer. Yeah, but not, no specific date as of yet.
I know that was a concern, was how quickly things happen, right? So
Yeah.
It seems like we won't weigh in unless you guys find something glaring and bring this board ASAP, but otherwise we probably wouldn't. But again, Aqua will probably be our best cheerleader, if you will, for the industry.
Yeah, we've worked with Aqua. We've signed on to their coalition letters and also water reuse because there is a recycled water component part of this regulation. And so we look at it with both of those coalitions and sign on to their letters that they send forth. But if there's anything specifically that we do notice that would impact us or a retailer, we'd certainly bring it to your attention.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, then thank you for the presentation. So we move on.
Sure. I will move on now to the federal update. And the Vanscoy Associates monthly report was provided to committee members at the handout and is also being posted, I believe, to the meeting chat for public access. And I didn't have the opportunity to do this last month, so I just wanted to briefly highlight that our Washington, D.C. advocacy trip last month went very well, with West Basin being represented by 3 directors, President Alvarez, Director Houston, and Director Gray, as well as General Manager Caldwell, myself, and our VSA representatives, Pete Evich, Jeff Bowman, and Ashley Strobel. We had a very busy agenda on the 3-day trip. On that Monday, Director Houston General Manager Caldwell and I met with representatives from Aqua, with Water Reuse, and with Metropolitan Water District. And then on Tuesday, our full West Basin contingent met with three representatives. Representative Grace Napolitano, who received a Legislator of the Year award, the Office of Representative Nanette Paragon, and the Office of Representative Ted Lieu. We also had a great agency meetings that day with both FEMA and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And then on Wednesday, our groups met with 7 representatives, Senator Alex Padilla, who received the Legislator of the Year award, the Office of Senator LaPonza Butler, Office of Representative Sidney Comlonger Dove, Representative Adam Schiff, who received the Legislative of the Year award, Representative Maxine Waters, the Office of Representative Brad Sherman, and then I know that Director Houston was also able to get an in-person with Representative Ted Lieu that day as well. So from staff's perspective, the directors all did a great job in communicating the needs and priorities of the district throughout the trip, and emphasize where and why future investments will be needed to support our recycled water program and other initiatives going forward. So very successful trip last month. Moving on to other items, last month, the House introduced a new low-income household water assistance program bill. This is HR 8032. And this is a companion bill to the legislation that Senator Padilla introduced earlier this year. If you'll recall, the Board of Directors took a support position on Senator Padilla's bill earlier this year. The House bill would similarly create a permanent low-income program to provide funding to states, which would then flow down to local governments and cities for offering residents water and wastewater bill relief. Both of those bills have been referred to respective committees, but no additional action has been taken so far. On a related note, the EPA is set to host a water affordability public listening session on June 3rd. So in a couple of weeks, to look at the ongoing affordability needs for households and utilities. The purpose of this session is for the EPA to receive feedback from utilities, from interest groups, and from other community stakeholders about the impacts of affordability and how to move forward in a prudent manner. A link to the listening session is provided in the VSA's monthly report. And again, that'll take place on June 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're able to log in, it's a Zoom type of webinar. Senator Padilla also recently introduced another piece of legislation called the Drought Act. Legislators love their acronyms, and this one means the Drought Relief Obtained Using Government Help Today Act, or S4134. This bill is intended to help alleviate the Western water crisis affecting the Colorado River and its associated reservoirs. It would do so by raising the cost assistance percentage that the federal government provides through the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA, from a maximum of 80% to 90%. This increase would allow more agencies and entities to be eligible for low interest WIFIA loans, which in previous years were as low as, I believe, 1%. But that, that has now kind of gone up based on inflation, some of those inflationary pressures. So staff is not advocating for a position on this bill right now, but we'll continue to monitor it. Another bill called out in the monthly report is HR 7525, which would codify in federal law the definition of a special district, helping to ensure that such districts are eligible for all appropriate forms of federal funding assistance. It'll also require the administration's Office of Management and Budget, so the OMB, to clarify how a federal agency recognizes a special district as a unit of local government for the purpose of receiving federal financial assistance. In California, special districts are already recognized under state law, which as you know, West Basin being formed many years ago as a municipal water district. This bill would provide a broader categorization of special districts, and for many years, West Basin has received federal funding, but this bill would further the recognition and assistance for special districts as a whole throughout the country. As noted in the report, West Basin's full congressional delegation voted in favor of the bill, but it now goes to the Senate where the next steps and timing of this bill are more unknown. I also wanted to bring to your attention that yesterday Metropolitan Water District's General Manager Adele Hodge-Khalil testified in the Senate Budget Committee on the topic of drought. The hearing was titled Droughts, Dollars, and Decisions, Water Scarcity in a Changing Climate. There was discussion of the drought's impact on urban areas, agriculture, and the environment, including the Colorado River. As you would expect, there was a lot of differing views on the impacts of climate change and what the priorities should be going forward. A copy of Mr. Hodge-Khalil's testimony was provided to the committee as a handout. Finally, I wanted to mention that last month, the EPA, the US EPA finalized a rule to designate 2 widely used PFAS chemicals as hazardous materials under the Superfund Act. We've reported on this issue to you before. The investigation and cleanup of both PFOA and PFOS contamination will now be authorized or enforced, in addition to ensuring that leaks, spills, and other releases of these designated harmful chemicals are now regularly reported. A separate policy was issued by the EPA that makes it clear the EPA will focus enforcement on parties who significantly contributed to the release of these chemicals into the environment, including those who manufactured them or who used them in their manufacturing processes. In addition, EPA's enforcement policy, consistent with past practice over decades of implementing this Superfund law, will provide additional clarity on the agency's intent not to pursue certain parties such as municipal landfills, water utilities, farmers, airports, local fire departments, where equitable factors do not support seeking Superfund cleanup or costs. This is good for us because you don't want to have to pay for, it's kind of the polluters pay principle. We want them to be held accountable, but not those public agencies that didn't create those chemicals or use them. So we've been very actively engaged on this issue. We've submitted multiple letters to administrative officials, to our senators, asking them to ensure that polluters pay principle is followed and that recycled water facilities like the Ed.C. Little plant are not put at risk as a downstream recipient of PFAS tainted waters. We'll continue to work with our partners and elected officials to ensure that we have the maximum amount of protection under the law, but it is good to see that the EPA has publicly recognized that water utilities should not be included in this Superfund's crosshairs. There's a lot of other great information included in the monthly report that I didn't cover that I won't go over now, but it does provide a good overview of other updates. So I encourage you to read through that if and when you get a chance. And that concludes my prepared remarks, but please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Director Deere, question?
Yes. No questions.
Okay. Director Williams,
No, thank you.
Director Houston.
Yes, I do actually. A couple of things. I just want to say thank you, Matt, for the update from Washington, D.C. when we were last there. And I remember, did we not meet last month or something? So we didn't get the report, did we? We canceled it. That's right. Okay. So yeah, we had a really good trip this past cycle, and Matt highlighted it all. So I'm not going to go further, but we're President, Director Alvarez, and Director Gray, myself, as well as our staff and our lobby team, I think all together did a great job. And we had some meetings we've never had before, such as with FEMA and of course our, dare I say, our usual meeting with the Department of Interior, but that was also very productive. And so I just want to thank PSA for making all those things happen with us. And as far as this memo is concerned, there were a couple of things. So one is I'm really interested in this EPA water affordability public listening session, although I don't understand how they do one listening session in one day for, I guess, the whole United States. I don't get that, but I think it's awesome. Do you know anything more about this? I mean, I guess it's more, I think the people are listening to the bureaucrats. I don't think most people can opine.
Yeah, I
Zoom call.
haven't registered for it, but I would like to get one of our staff on there to see kind of what the discussion is like. And if we get more information on that. In the meantime, I'd be happy to have the board secretary send it out to the directors.
Okay. Now, what I was thinking is, I mean, obviously, this is a public meeting. And I think it would be good probably for the district to maybe just put it out there somehow on social media in advance to say, this is transpiring, here's a way to participate, because maybe people in our communities are interested or that follow us. So I think that that is a reasonable ask. If you all would look at that. And I don't even know if this day I can actually tune in myself, but it's good that they're doing it. And it would be good for people to know about it, because we've talked about it before. Water affordability is one of our biggest issues, period. We're very, very pleased that our Senator Padilla has been leading the charge on this too, right? Yeah, I had one other comment. Oh, yeah. The special districts that this grant Assembly Act in the House, I thought that was interesting. I obviously had not heard this. Got overwhelming support, although 27 people apparently didn't like it. So 27 people in Congress were against this, but 352 were for it. But our whole delegation was for it. So my question would be, is there a way that we can somehow send a note to our two senators from California to, maybe we have to take an official position on this, but that we can say we support this and encourage some people to act?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I did actually talk with Pete Evich yesterday about that, and he said, yes, there's nothing that's been introduced on the Senate side. So if we did want to reach out, submit a letter to our senators, that would be a way to do that.
Okay. So I don't know, how do we have to officially take a position to do that?
Typically, it would depend on if it's an action by the board of directors versus a letter from the general manager. So
Yeah, there's no bill
Yeah.
in print, so
Okay.
it would be a letter of encouragement, I guess.
Okay.
Than anything else, so. But we could certainly have it come from the board of directors, if that's something that you wanted to vote on as a board.
Personally, I think we should look at doing that. I mean, again, it seems pretty non-controversial. The Congress already passed it overwhelmingly. Our whole congressional delegation voted for it. I think it would be good if and if it has to be the board takes a position or whatever, but if it came from the board just to our two senators to say, this is worthy, we should, we encourage you to support this. Maybe one of them could lead it. I don't know. And then also just working with BSA, that I don't know which senator might eventually carry this. I think we should be right there to be a supporter. And lastly on that, you got California special districts, but isn't there a federal special districts or not? I don't know. I know that the California special districts were engaged with some stuff, but you might want to talk to them as well, just to,
happy to do that.
just to say too, if there's a way we can somehow just, add our position into it, that'd be awesome. I'm glad to see this is happening though. So the more the merrier, right? Yeah, you didn't mention it specifically, but also obviously a lot of work going on with cybersecurity. So thanks for this, and you'll keep us posted. And so with that, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Houston, and for all those comments, and staff can respond to them as appropriate. I just want to say that I won't go over everything that's been said about the Washington DC trip. Just to say that it was a great trip. It was very productive. Thank you to our lobbyists in DC and to staff here in LA. Thank you guys for everything. It was a great schedule. We were able to see a lot of our folks in office who represent our district and others. And you've heard the report, but I just want to thank you for the very productive trip. So with that, can we move to the next item?
Yes, Madam Chair, the last item is item 6B. It begins on page 76. and it is our monthly Metropolitan Water District program update. And for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-Happen, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon again. So yes, as EJ mentioned, this information begins on page 76 of the committee packet. The Metropolitan Water District report is intended to brief you on current activities that are relevant to West Basin and its customer agencies. And this report summarizes recent activity at the Metropolitan Water District that include the adopted biannual budget and rate. Metropolitan Board expressed support for broadening their bond priority, new LRP projects that were approved, updates on the second lower feeder, and then lastly, the chart illustrating the water supply condition. So first off, regarding the adopted biannual budget and rate, on April 9th, Metropolitan adopted their biannual rates and charges. Throughout this process, staff developed several rate alternatives based on feedback from their board members on the initial proposed options. Staff did prepare 9 additional options. And then during the April board meeting, Metropolitan staff presented 3 new options for the board to consider. So there was a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement, a lot of input from the board. They took that and they prepared 3 new options. Metropolitan Board option 1 was approved. And option 1 basically includes lower water sales assumptions of 1.34 million acre feet, with a reduction from 1.44 million acre feet in anticipated sales. It also includes $18 million of reduction in their annual operating and maintenance expenditures. It also includes increased of property assessed valuation to a 0.007% tax rate. And that is an increase, pretty much double from what it was. It was 0.0035%. And it assumes $60 million of new revenue. And that would include future opportunity to sell water from their storage reserves and grant funding, which is a program that is still really being developed, but it's an opportunity that Met staff feels that they can do this for the next 2 years. The overall rate increase will be 8.5% in 2026 and then 8.5% in 2027. The rates and charges include the full service treated water rate increase of 11.1% in 2026, and then in 2027, another 10% increase. The readiness to serve charge increase of 8% in 2026 and 4% in 2027, and a capacity charge increase of 16% in 2026 and 12% in 2027. Moving forward, Metropolitan staff will be reviewing a business model update with their board, and there will be several areas that they will be discussing, which include the treatment surcharge and existing cost recovery methods. Later this year in August, the Metropolitan Board will consider their action on fixing the ad valorem property taxes after a report of the certified assessed valuations had been conducted by the county auditor. So even though they approved that in their budget and rates, they still have to take another action in August. So that's pretty much a summary on the budget and rates. And then moving along to page 77 regarding the climate resiliency bond. Metropolitan, the board expressed support for broadening their bond priority to increase or to include funding for delta levy improvements and the climate resiliency bond proposal, AB 1567 and SB 867. Last year, these 2 bond proposals were introduced, which proposed to provide a wide variety of climate-related investments, water projects and programs. The Metropolitan staff recommended incorporating $250 million, a request for the subvention program, into Metropolitan climate bond priority. As you may recall, Metropolitan owns 4 islands on the Delta along the State Waters Project supply route from the Sacramento River to its pumping facilities that are located in the South Delta area. The Delta County Coalition requested metropolitan support for $250 million for the Delta Levy Maintenance Subvention Program in the state of California climate bonds accession. This subvention program is a cost-shared program that is managed by DWR. It reimburses local maintenance agencies and reclamation districts for eligible maintenance and repair of the existing system of the levees. Metropolitan received an average of $10 million a year in reimbursements, of which Metropolitan received an average of $500,000 a year from this program. So moving on to the local resources program. Last month, the Metropolitan Board voted to approve separate LRP agreements with 4 member agencies that include Eastern Municipal Water District, Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, Municipal Water District of Orange County, and the LA DWP. So these are all for treating mainly, groundwater and supplied in their local projects. So this was a pretty big vote consideration. So it's happy to see Metropolitan, putting forth and supporting these projects. So next item, we get a summary on page 20, on the next page for the pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe reliability program. So the updates on these 2 projects are located within West Basin service area. As I reported in the past, the second lower feeder reached 3B. It traverses the cities of Lomita, Los Angeles, and Torrance. And this installs steel lining and 3 conical plug valves along a 3.7 mile long portion. So a temporary bypass line serving 2 service connections at the Palos Verdes Reservoir was complete, and the shutdown was complete in April 2024. A second shutdown is planned for next winter. And so overall, the overall project is 42% complete and is scheduled to be completed in September 2025. And the Sepulveda feeder PCCP rehabilitation Reach 1 design, that Reach 1 of the Sepulveda feeder spans 4.7 miles through several cities that include Hawthorne, Inglewood, and Los Angeles. And the project's final design is approximately 75% done, and that is scheduled to be completed next month, June 2024. So also included in this report under the attachment are the board item actions, specifically what was acted on, the board member vote results, and then a list of items for the May meeting. And so the board agenda look ahead, the board May meeting on May 14th. So now we're already past that. But one of the things that the board they did have on their agenda that they acknowledged Director Gloria Gray's service on the Metropolitan Board for 15 years. So thank you, Director Gray, for all of your work and your contributions. Also, a couple of key items that were acted upon. The Metropolitan Board adopted a resolution to continue Metropolitan Water standby charge for fiscal year 24-25. And then also Metropolitan concurred with the Climate Adaptation Master Plan for Water, the draft year 1 progress report and next steps. So those are updates for the Metropolitan programs that were acted upon. And then next I can move on to the water supply condition. So they're on the graphic that is at the final part of the committee agenda, located on page 92. So on that right side of the State Water Project, the Lake Orono Reservoir has reached its full capacity. And on April 2nd, DWR conducted the April snow survey, which indicated above average snowpack for the 2nd straight season. And then later, following that on April 23rd, DWR announced a further increase in the State Water Project water supply allocation, up 40% from 30%. So this level of allocation will now allow Metropolitan to begin storing water instead of depleting it from their storage. The allocations are updated monthly as the snowpack rainfall and runoff information is assessed, with the final allocation typically determined either May or June. And on the right side, the blue shaded area for the Upper Colorado River Basin, it's measuring 101% of normal and snowpack at 115% of normal. So if we move on to the next page for all the charts, the State Water Project, the green shaded area, the Northern Sierra snowpack conditions have shown much improvement since the start of the water year. The box next to the right on the H station precipitation index shows 45 inches of precipitation to date with conditions at 92% of normal. And then for the Colorado River Basin area, last year with the wet winter helped. In addition to that, there's also been a significant amount of conservation effort by the California water users that has helped Lake Mead's elevation to increase. And I just want to mention that part of that result of the conserved water includes Metropolitan's successful land fallowing programs that they had for their farmers. So as a result, Metropolitan used 700,000 acre feet less of the Colorado River supply from their allocated amount. So the chart for Lake Mead storage shows 1.6 million acre feet more compared to last year. It is at 35% capacity, and the lower basin is at level 1 shortage in calendar year 2024, but under this level, Metropolitan's operations are not impacted. So that concludes my report. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you for that acknowledgement of my service in Metropolitan. Director Deere, do you have any comments?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Director Houston?
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Very thorough report. The next item, please.
Madam Chair, the next item is closed session, and we have no closed session items. Thereafter, it brings us to item 8, director's comments and future agenda items.
Thank you. Director Deere, any comments or future agenda items?
Just want to thank the staff for very thorough reports. Excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Director Houston?
My comment would be 1, thank you to staff, of course, and then 2 is wishing everyone a very nice Memorial Day weekend, although also remembering what the purpose of Memorial Day is, of course, honoring and remembering all those who gave their ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. So remember that come Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and my comments is again reiterating what all the board members are saying. Thank you to staff. You always give great reports. Very committed to the organization and very thorough. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. The same sentiments with you. And thank you, board members, and thank you, Director Houston, for mentioning Memorial Day. And we need to make sure we remember our veterans. Thank you very much. And that is concludes our meeting. So thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.